Hello and welcome to Autocar Dialogues. We are in conversation with Harshbeena Zaveri, the Vice Chairperson and Managing Director of NRB Bearings. Harshbeena, thanks for talking to us. Just off the bat, there's a lot of transition going on in the industry right now. As a bearing manufacturer and a supplier, typically bearings are a lot in combustion engines. Just wanted to get your thoughts on this transition. I mean, is that a worry? Are you pushing more towards electrification? And just generally your overview on, let's say, from even a supplier point of view in the current market.
They are interesting times. I agree with you. And we have all these different trends sort of taking place at the same time, so to speak. And we're not sure which one is exactly where. And I'm now thinking about NRB's situation. We're not actually that much in engine applications, predominantly because I don't believe in a less sustainable world, to be honest. So for very, very, very many years, we focused not just on fuel efficiency, we focused on those parts which are not very much connected with the engine itself. It's right. The rest of the application. Now, you might ask me, what is that? For example, transmissions, whether they are ICE or hybrid or even electronic transmissions, steering applications. We are very much in things like chassis, so that's not going to change, right?
Right.
It's going to evolve, yes, but not disappear. And in the two-wheeler space, yes, two-wheelers predominantly are driven by engines, but we are also in EV two-wheelers. But I do believe, and I'd like to start with two-wheelers because they're a significant portion of our sales, that it's going to be sort of split off into very commoditized EV vehicles and high performance, larger and larger vehicles, which will be more fuel efficient,
right,
but not necessarily EV.
Right.
Now let's talk about the car industry. In the passenger vehicle industry, I think that choice is going to be important, which is why hybrid is, I think, something that we shouldn't underestimate.
So you are for hybrids?
I'm definitely for hybrid, and I'm for hybrid for more than one reason. I'm for hybrid because I think it's the best thing for India. It's the best thing for our auto component industry. I'm not talking about the consumer, okay?
Right.
I'm on the supply side.
Right.
And I think that hybridization, if it succeeds, and it is succeeding in lots and lots of parts of the world, Toyota has been proven right, and a lot of the Japanese are being proven right, correct?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, the European industry has not really been able to become like a market leader in this space. China has been proven right because they've been able to design the world's most phenomenal EV vehicles. And then the only other player on the block is Tesla, right? So I think that these will all survive side by side. But I do think that hybrid is something that should be encouraged by the government.
So by encouraged, you mean they should get some fiscal benefit as well?
Whatever they're doing for EV, they should do for hybrid.
Really?
I think they should be clear that both are good for our country, supply side and demand side.
Right.
And they shouldn't push one against the other. And I also have another reason. As a company, we are very much entrenched in the higher, more sophisticated, futuristic versions of ICE, but through the sub-suppliers who are now coming up with the same technological solution in an aggregate for all of the above, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that we, and I've coined this word, and a lot of people have started using it, but I came up with it, EV agnostic. So we are in a huge number of EV agnostic applications, where it doesn't matter if it's going to be EV, ICE, or hybrid. And I think that the government should also play its card carefully. We shouldn't get too tied to one
technology
or one solution. We shouldn't try and predict what's going to happen in the world.
But don't you think that from a carbon emissions perspective, that EVs is the final solution? Because finally, at the end of the day, you want to, let's say, get, and that's with an ICE engine, there's always going to be some carbon emission because
So I'm not for ICE. I mentioned to you I'm for hybrid.
right. No, but
Okay.
hybrid has an ICE engine. That's what I meant. So,
Well, it could be any kind of alternate. It could be hydrogen fuel. It could be, like we had before, agricultural based fuels. It could be many other solutions like a combo of solar, a combination of EV. Definitely there's electric motors which are being driven on kinetic energy. There are many, many things. But I'm also not completely convinced that EV is as clean as it's made out to be.
right. Yeah.
There are a lot of question marks there. And
The way it's manufactured. Yeah, exactly. So,
there's also another element to this. I think anything that's built to last, anything that's high quality, anything that you use for at least 7 years or more that doesn't get outdated as easily, definitely mobile phones are not good for the environment.
yeah,
Anything you have to throw away is not good for the environment.
right.
You get my point? So you have to balance all these things if you want a better world.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about NRB from the business point of view. I think from what I understand, you're quite broad spread right now. I mean, looking at your, let's say, customer base, not too dependent on one OEM or even one powertrain. I mean, is that been the focus and strategy? I mean, going forward to de-risk as much as possible?
We did it very early on. For the last maybe 10 to 15 years, almost 20 years. I became president of the company in 2001, and then I became managing director, maybe 10 years later. And I have always felt that your best risk mitigator is not to try and predict the future, not to be too dependent on any one trend or therefore any one customer and therefore any one type of technology or future. So the one thing I think that puts NRB apart from the others is we custom make solutions, and we do them very cost effectively, which not to say is not high margin. Cost effective solutions in manufacturing are actually either can be driven by VA, VV, VE, or TPM and really stripping down the cost structure, or they can be driven by creating a value proposition that is very hard for somebody else to give. We do both, but our fundamental value proposition is our R&D and our engineering. I don't know if you know, NRB set up its R&D center in 2000, 2001.
Right.
It was not an easy thing to do. We were the first. None of the bearing companies had it here. Virtually no auto comps had it. I would say the one company that did was TVS, then Suzuki, and after that without the Suzuki. Very few players in India really do world-class R&D and have built world-class brands. And I say this with a fair amount of sadness. I'm not happy about it, but do we have an Oracle? We have TCS, but do we have an Oracle?
Yeah.
Right? Do we have a SAP? Do we have a
So what you're saying is for that
ultimate vehicle that everybody aspires
to
have when they're rich and famous?
Yeah.
Right? So I do think the fact that we supply to Daimler, we supply to Audi, we supply to, look at tier 2, ZF, Magna, BorgWarner, there are literally almost no vehicles in the world that are cutting edge. Whether it was a Renault Alpine, it had our products. Whether it was a Mini Cooper hybrid, it had our products. Whether it's a Lambo, the Lamborghini had our products. So really, I mean, you're talking about, and of course, the Renault, Nissan, the Megane, the Scenics, the, BMW, from 1 to whatever, they do have our products. And 90% plus of the vehicles on the Indian roads have our products. So we're a smart company, but we're so important to everyone.
Yeah.
That really we are far more important than other players, which tend to be in the high, I would say, high revenue commoditized space.
Right.
We're as decommoditized as you possibly can be.
So, you're talking about being very customized and all. Does it all come from investing a lot in R&D and innovation. I mean, how does it set it apart? I mean, what's the secret sauce, for example?
Two secrets. Of course, we think R&D is very important. Of course, we think innovation is very important. Do we invest a huge percentage of sales? Actually, if you get it right, R&D and innovation don't cost as much in India. Keep that in mind. Just like tools don't cost as much as India. There are a lot of things.
Because R&D and all is very people intensive and that's not very expensive. Yeah.
Two things, okay? All the other companies in the world, you know what percentage of their sales they spend on R&D.
Yeah.
And the first change comes after Henry Ford. You open a beeper, it's just the same as what Henry Ford made. The first change comes and they're rushing to buy companies. So what do they do with their R&D spend? Can you explain that? I haven't understood it yet.
Yeah. Well, I think they've been focusing their R&D on one type of technology or one trend.
I'm not answering the question, but it's a question that begs an answer. You know, the second point, the question I haven't forgotten. What do we invest in? We invest in people. Everything that you talked about, it comes from people. NRB's real differentiator is its people. And I say this with a lot of confidence. We are a very inclusive company. We're a very unstratified company. We're a very non-hierarchical, extremely diverse. This is truly one of the companies where you get a job because you deserve to get the job, not because of... Well, merit is a very weird.
Well, on competency, I mean, you wouldn't get someone who's good at his job.
In my opinion, competency is oversold. Okay? People use competency a lot of times to block. They use competency to control. They use competency to negotiate. The non-negotiables when we hire someone for NRB is zero ego. Okay, so you can have the smartest person around. If they're not humble and willing to learn, and they don't, our interviews focus on what somebody doesn't know, not what they know. It focuses on failure, not on success. We are more interested in people who love failing and don't make the same mistake again.
Right.
I'm really not a big fan of, especially Indian male competency.
Right.
It's very oversold. The point I'm making is that competency is important. I'm not saying it's not important. Competency just gets you the interview. It never gets you the job here.
Right.
What gets you the job and what differentiates our people is, one, they don't believe that an Indian company is secondary to anyone.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not a great believer in this technology stuff that is oversold a lot by government and by heads of companies. Okay? I think you can evolve your own technology, you can develop your own technology, you can be very disruptive, you can be very innovative, but that kind of company has to have a certain culture. It has to have a backbone. It has to have a culture of people speaking up, disagreeing, brainstorming. That is innovation.
Yeah.
It's not product innovation. It's the people who create it. It's the thoughts. And NRB is a company which really welcomes such people, and they have very little choice.
Yeah.
There are very few companies that do that.
That's interesting. So what, as you said, your secret sauce for the products you make, for the technologies you develop, is all getting the right people. And just from my understanding is, I mean,
people with the right attitude.
Right. Yeah.
And people who are great learners. People who have a great education. I actually only look at school education when I hire people.
Right.
I don't care if they don't have an MBA. I actually am equally happy with people who went to regional colleges and got diploma in engineering, if that was a challenge for them.
As they say today, a skill is more important than a degree in some ways.
Again, I'm not into specialization. I never hire people who have done the same job for the last 20 years because they have not path breakers.
Yeah.
I want leaders, I want path breakers. Even if they're the junior most people joining the company, I meet them. I meet everyone who joined the company.
Really?
Every single person who joined the company.
And how many people do you employ right now?
So we have probably close to 400 or 500 in management, if you count. I mean, all my unions. I mean, all my employees. I love my unions. I love my shop floor.
Yeah.
And I don't hire people who think giving a job to somebody else is their job.
Yeah.
They need to be clear. What are they giving from their life and what are they doing themselves? Their job can't be just giving stuff to other people,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So what value are they bringing to the company?
Got it. So, Ashwina, that's interesting. But now you've got your set of people, obviously, very capable of developing products, new technologies. I just want to get yourself in terms of the trend of where do you see the market growing? I mean, where do you see NRB's, let's say, next big bet?
So I think that the automotive industry is evolving a lot. And I think there's a lot of overlap over the years going to take place. For example, when you're talking about EV, the whole electrical grid, the creation of it becomes as important, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the vehicle anymore.
Yeah.
So the infrastructure around the kind of changes that are going to happen, robots are going to become very important in manufacturing. 4.0 manufacturing has a whole different thought process in our company and outside. So NRB sees a lot of opportunities in the general trends that are taking place, whether it's connected to the mobility space, whether it's connected to the beyond mobility space.
Right. And, obviously, for a company like y'all, you would also look beyond the Indian market. Exports is a big push, lot of volume, lot of scale. Margins are typically better. Is that also going to be a focus area? I mean, you are exporting a fair bit right now, but do you think that's going to be something that's a bigger opportunity going forward? Because the world also is in a mess in a lot of places. And clearly, we've got a lot of opportunity in India. But I think this is also a dawn for Indian manufacturers now to step up and, let's say, get into export markets.
That's one thing. When you're talking about export markets, you mean make in India and export it.
That's right.
Which again, I think is a little too narrow for the future.
No, what I mean is develop in India, create in India, make in India, and export.
Exactly. But the same way that India is closing up, right? The whole world is closing up. And that's the way the trend is. And I don't think it's an Indian issue or an American issue.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think what you can create here that can be used to make somewhere else is going to be important. So make in USA is going to become extremely important. We already have substantial manufacturing in Thailand.
Right.
And that is for the ASEAN market, for all the countries that Thailand has a great relationship with. So this is my answer also to your first question. How are you going to take the challenges that this world is throwing up? When the FTA happened with Thailand, we decided, let's just go there.
Yeah.
Let's go and set up a manufacturing facility there and turn it into an advantage.
Right.
Which is what we did.
Right.
So we export from there to here, we export from here to there, and we export to the whole world together. So that's one question. Which other countries are throwing up that same kind of opportunity is something that we're looking at quite deeply.
So that's right thing. So it's not just exports, it's to go to those markets, manufacture for that domestic market over there. Because clearly that's one way to kind of get past the borders, especially with globalization coming under threat and everyone erecting kind of fences to protect their domestic manufacturing.
Yeah. So I think that we make here, of course. And I think that India and the EU is going to continue to have a strong bond because they both, well, one is they're actually both small markets. India is not a large market. India has a large population, but it's not a large market. It's a large market for very cheap products.
Right.
The minute you make a high quality premium product, it's a small market. Europe is small because it's got less people. So there's a lot of synergy there, which I think both areas they recognize. So that will continue to be strong. USA is a humongous, huge market. So they call the shots a lot more. Just like China is a large market, but it's more a large supply chain market. And China has very good relationship with a whole set of countries too. So I think we need to understand very clearly where they stand. And NRB, because of its diversity and its backbone and the culture that we have, it's very easy for us to transition globally. For example, in Thailand, we have 4 Indian employees out of 200.
Wow.
when I gave you the number of employees, I gave it to you for India.
Right.
But in Thailand, we just have 4 because we didn't go there to set up an Indian company to teach Thai people and the Japanese what to do. We went there to learn. And you can only learn if
Right.
you hire people from that space and you get a different type of thought process.
Right. No, and Harshbeena, just winding up, it's been very interesting, but obviously you're very optimistic of Indian auto industry and going forward and the global opportunities. So, the next 5 years, where do you see NRB?
So I definitely see us being one of the most flexible and responsive players. So where the EV succeeds, we're in it. We're in Lucid, we're in many EV applications. We're in many applications that will do equally well, whether it's ICE or EV or hybrid. I think that the fact that many of our competitors are going through a fairly heavy challenge. You know very well that SKF has been cleaved into 2 and that Schaeffler internationally, because of assorted reasons, including all the heavy acquisitions that they did to get into the EV space. I think one of the problems is that people try to time this. We at NRB never try to time it. You know these changes are going to happen, but you really don't know how it's going to hit you. Why? And therefore, I think you have to have a very strong risk-mitigated strategy.
But isn't that a lot of investment? I mean, to invest in all powertrains, all technologies. Obviously, that mitigates risk, but it comes at a certain investment and cost.
Well, it depends because our manufacturing processes and the whole way that we do this, because we're a customized solution company, is to have manufacturing processes that have a lot of flexibility.
Right.
We don't tend to buy a machine that like the Chinese or like an SKF or like a traditional player does, which is very high volume. We have far more flexible lines which are custom made. We ourselves put in our own robots and we have a lot of flexible design in our manufacturing process as well.
Right.
That gives us a lot of resilience and a lower cost solution for customization.
That's right. Absolutely.
And that's where the mindset makes a difference. You go and hire someone from another company, they come with that mindset. You go and get a bunch of white people in or Japanese people in. They're trying to recreate a piece of Japan here.
Right.
Or recreate a piece of, we actually say what is the right thing for our customer and what is the best way for us to combine all cultural attitudes and approaches to get it.
Right. So clearly, I think flexibility, being much more holistic, is the way forward. Disruptive. And clearly, as you said.
And investing in R&D.
Yeah. And of course, I think, as you said, people is really your secret sauce. That's how it is.
And listening to our customers.
Absolutely.
Because, the kind of products we make, Hormazd, they are always co-engineered. So what happens? We don't work necessarily globally with the OEM because the car companies, they just buy out, right? But if you work with the immediate tier 1, which is the most complex part going in,
like the gear,
which is or a Borgwano or a Meritor or a similar company, ZF, then you are actually understanding the technological change that is taking place and you're racing to help your customers succeed.
Right.
That is a lot of value for them.
Right. So sometimes being a tier 2 is more valuable for you and being more flexible.
It depends on how the market is. In India, tier 1 is, OEMs are very important.
Right.
Okay? Very, very important.
Globally.
They call this shots and they have their own set of tier 1, right? But for example, we're very strong in the Hyundai group and we supply to their tier 1 because their tier 1 puts everything together for them.
Right.
On the other hand, a lot of Indian companies, they just buy directly from it depends market to market.
Right.
In India, this is the case. Globally, we find that the technology vests with the next tier.
Right.
It doesn't vest really with the auto companies, as you've seen.
Right. Well, Harshbeena, has been pleasure talking to you. Glad to know that in this very disruptive world, you're quite confident, having really, I would say, hedged your bets, been present in a lot of the areas, not just banking on one technology, and really your holistic approach to your company, where the people at the core of your success.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Talking to you. Thank you.
Okay.